questions from the audience, but the first question kind of has to be that your free is astonishing, and that this film got made is wonderful. But the horror part of this, what makes this a horror movie, is 2003, 2005, 2008, not the 1880s, not the 1950s, but that so much was still going wrong in this decade, in the past decade. And would you talk that a little bit about how did you get involved, and how did this whole process come about? No questions from the audience.
Well, I was late to the game. I mean, like John Rayleigh was part of this story a long time before I was. We've got some mutual friends, Nellie Gonzalez and John Dean, who introduced me to this story and introduced me to John Rayleigh, and John introduced me to Michael a little over a year ago. I think January of last year was when.
John, stand up.
But I've always thought this was just a fantastic story. I mean, just a great story of human survival and redemption and inspiration. And I mean, I've been a Texas journalist for a long time. I know a really good story when I see one.
And with both of you, how did you handle it when it was 2003 and 2005, and you both just kept going? Well, in many ways you had no options, but you know what I mean.
Perseverance is a funny thing. People often want to pat me on the back for it or say what a great thing it was, but more often than not, you don't have a choice. You can do more than you think you can. And I strongly suspect that most all of you could too, if you were there, if you had to, if you didn't have that option of opting out.
Michael is a role model for me, as he is for many of you, I'm sure. And every time I met with him, I felt inspired to keep fighting, keep trying. And I always felt that there was almost this voice saying, just don't quit, keep going. It'll be okay eventually. I'm on it. And there are times we almost gave in to despair. The fight was much harder than we thought it would be. But we knew that if we just kept fighting, not quitting, it would eventually be okay.
Questions from the audience? Yes.
Throughout the show, there was a lot of, we'll start with the juror in the black, the blue, whatever. She made a statement early on that where she said that about Ken Anderson, how he was good looking and she wanted it to be unbelievable. And then you had Ken Anderson who said something like how Mr. Morton was cold in the courtroom. And then you had the killer who said, that he recognized a lot of shenanigans. How do you get rid of all that stuff before you just try and commit the truth?
He's asking about the juror who talks about how good looking the DA was and how the DA was so dynamic, and and talking about how he looked cold when he was on the stand, and how do you get rid of all those affectations and shenanigans and get at the truth is the question.
Well, there was no evidence against Michael. That was the first thing we realized when we read the file, we read the transcript. There was nothing whatsoever that could reasonably be used to convict this man. And unfortunately, this, as we called it, junk science, was allowed to be in the courtroom. What the video didn't show is that Dr. Bayardo admitted under cross-examination that there is no scientifically precise way to time death based on stomach content analysis. And that although this is his opinion, it's not a scientific opinion, which means it shouldn't have even come into evidence at all. But Ken Anderson, on closing argument, on rebuttal, when it was too late for the defense to say anything in response, said at least half a dozen times, medical science proves Michael Morton is the killer, time of death. over and over and over again. And that's what the jurors used. And he said, and by the way, look what this monster did. And he showed pictures of the crime scene about how horrible it was. And so it was really an appeal to emotion, but there was no real evidence against him at all. And so when we read the file, that's what we realized. There's nothing there. And then when I met with him, I realized not only is there no evidence against him, but he's innocent.
Another question up there.
This message is for Michael. Can you share your insights into your enormous and unbelievable capacity to forgive? Yeah.
The question's for Mike. Can he share his insights into his enormous capacity to forgive and to let go?
The stock answer is always it's the grace of God. It's something larger than yourself. It's something more powerful than anything you could do. I also want to review back to the thing that Pastor John told me that I'd heard before, but he reminded me that holding all that in and not forgiving and hating and wanting revenge is akin to drinking that poison and hoping that other guy dies from it. It's natural to want to get your revenge, but if you go down that road, it will damage you as much as the person you damage.
Over here in the back, yeah.
This isn't a question, but I just want to say, all those bad lawyers who acted so poorly in Williamson County, I think that John Rayleigh is the epitome, the poster child for what all lawyers should aspire to.
Yes, over there.
Michael, my daughter dated Eric all through college. You probably don't know that. And I just have to give you a hug because Eric is very close to my heart. He was her first true love. They were actually each other's first true loves. And he's been many times at her home, Christmases and birthdays. And I just want to come give you a hug.
What's the holdup?
Yeah, let's take another question or
Here.
Yes.
Can't the trial judge be faulted in this case for not, if he wasn't going to give the defense a copy of all the police reports, shouldn't he have ordered the prosecutor to turn them over to him in camera where he could have found this exculpatory evidence?
He did. That's what the court of inquiry is all about.
The question was about the judge in the original trial making sure that all the evidence was shared.
It's the question, it's a great question, it's exactly on point. The judge ordered that, and this is in our publicly filed documents about Judge Anderson, that Don Wood's complete reports, which have been variously described as several inches thick, be produced in camera for the court to review to see if there's any evidence in it there that could be useful for the defense. And of course, an eyewitness account of the murderer being someone other than the accused falls into that category. Now, when Mr. Anderson was asked a direct question by the trial judge, do you have any evidence that could be useful for the defense? He said no. Direct question, answer. That's what the state bar is concerned about. But of course, we have the van report with the old, the old van, and we now, well, I can't say a couple things, but because the trial's next week, Mr. Norwood. But obviously, the van report would also be something the defense would want to have as well. Neither of those things were the documents submitted in camera to Judge Lott at trial. And they were in a sealed envelope at the Court of Appeals, like a time capsule, waiting for us to eventually open it. And when we did, it was awesome. Patricia Cummings was there when it happened. She's here in this audience. Up there, and that. Here, very excited.
This is for Michael. You were talking about forgiveness, but where does that fall with Norwood now? Are you going to be submitting this trial?
Speak up.
The question's about forgiveness. It's for Michael, and then how does he feel about Norwood and with Norwood's upcoming trial?
And will it be hard to sit through that trial?
And will it be hard to sit through that trial?
I'll be there Monday, I'll let you know. I've had a while to work through the stuff with the people that you've seen in this movie, the prosecutor and the judges and stuff. But the short answer is I don't know yet. I haven't been in the room with him yet. But intellectually, I know, down the road, we always have to forgive. But I'm not there yet.
This question is for Al. There's a lot of people surrounding this story, and you made choices not to interview many of them. Michael's parents, sister-in-law, and I was just wondering what went into your thinking about that.
The question is, there's a lot of people around this story, and some of them were not interviewed and others were, and how did Al make the decisions as to who to include and who not to include? In other words, how did he decide how to tell the story?
Well, a lot of it is just trying to keep a focus on the main story. I mean, there were people that were interviewed that you don't see in the movie. There were a lot more hours and hours of interview that didn't make it into the movie. I mean, we're like, you always have many times as much material as you can fit into a movie. And you really just have to make choices about what advances the story, what keeps the focus on what's important. And, you just kind of trust in your judgment doing that.
And nobody wants to sit through a 10-hour movie.
And there were some people that didn't want to be interviewed. I mean, like that we would have liked to talk to, that you don't have any control over. I mean, one of the things about documentary filmmaking is that a lot of stuff happens that you have no control over, good and bad. And you just have to do your best with the material that appears in front of you.
Okay, let's take two more questions over there.
Mr. Black, before this documentary started, you said this is such an important thing that's happening right here because it's affecting change. And I want to know from Mr. Raleigh, what do you want to change? Where do you want it to go? What is the system that's going to actually...
The question was to Mr. Raleigh, and it's
Not being
how
able
is
to
this
county,
going?
that's already been taken by somebody who's going to do a good job. How's that? A lot of things need to change, and Michael's doing a lot right now on that. There has to be accountability for a prosecutor who conceals evidence of a defendant's innocence. Because the consequences are horrible, not only for Michael's family, but for the Baker family as well, and I suspect for other families as well. And I think they're looking into those things. So there are a lot of different interpretations as to what those consequences should be. But there are some people that, in my opinion, should not be in a position of power to have the responsibility to make choices that affect people's lives. And so we have a man in Williamson County that's still sitting on the bench presiding over cases wearing a robe, making decisions about whether there is Brady material and evidence and that sort of thing. He is now before a court of inquiry. Rusty Morton is the special prosecutor. The briefing is coming soon in that. The state bar has its action against Mr. Anderson. But globally is what you're thinking. Yes, there should be legislation bringing accountability. I think that not only bar license issues, but also, I believe, criminal penalties, because you're obstructing justice. If defendants can be held responsible or, charged with obstructing justice, why can't prosecutors when they conceal evidence as well?
And this case is already a much discussed case. It's a case that has opened a lot of people's eyes, has mobilized a lot of people, and this film is literally a match to that powder keg in terms of the level of discussion that's now ongoing. And so the film is actually having real world consequences in just a very, very short period of time, and I think that will just grow.
Thank God.
Michael, the movie makes clear that not only was terrible injustice done to you in terms of taking away 25 years of your life, but you lost the woman you loved. The person who took her away from you gone free for a quarter century. I gotta ask you, how do you wake up every morning of your life and not feel angry to the marrow of your bones?
The question is, given the compound nature of what happened to Michael, that he lost the woman he loved, that he lost his family, that he was wrongfully convicted, that the person who killed his wife went free for 25 years, that he was handled very badly by the justice system. How does he get up every morning and just function as a human being and not be consumed?
The truth is that for a number of years I was consumed. You heard me say in the film that I spent a number of years plotting the demise of people responsible for my incarceration. When you can't do anything to bring back your loved ones, the knee-jerk reaction to lash out. I was going to murder some people. I'd already been charged with it. I was going to have paid the time for it. I was going to go ahead and do it. I was going to different ones that I felt responsible. Everybody from the DA, the judge, the sheriff, I'm sorry, the jury foreman, on and on. I was very and
Licensed lawyer, though, I think.
You're still looking. But seriously, time will help you get over things. You have to go beyond that. You can't wake up every morning of your life angry, or you'll have a very short life. And after you go through the process, if forgiveness isn't for you there at the end of the day, you'll be a very unhappy person.
We're not taking any more questions. Just a quick personal note, which is, this is the 20th anniversary of South by Southwest Film. Nick Barbo and I, who started the Chronicle together and helped start South by Southwest, met as graduate film students, and Roland Swenson, who's the managing director and the hands-on partner of South by Southwest, was an RTF student. So we all met as film-related students, and we began this 20 years ago because we passionately cared about film. And as we end 2013, I have to say that everything we've worked on, everything we've tried to do over our decades in Austin has been so that we could present events like this. I came to introduce this film because Marcy and Al were involved, and I heard it was an extraordinary film. I didn't expect who we would have here as guests, that we would have them. I didn't expect to be blown away by the film. I didn't expect you, this audience, and I just want to thank you and thank them and say this makes an enormous amount of meaning for me. Thank you.